There is power in personal stories. It connects us, it empowers us, and it holds us accountable. It creates understanding and expands our perspective. This is Big in the Community with Jonathan James at the Kalamazoo Promise, a podcast aimed to highlight local leaders, collaborators, and innovators in the greater Kalamazoo community. All right, welcome back to another episode of Big in the Community. I have a good friend here, Mike. You know, Mike, I have to tell you something. Your last name.
It's a tough one.
I just looked at it.
I meant to ask ahead of time.
I've said it before, and I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
You know what? I'm going to cue it up so you can introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Great.
So, Mike, can we start over?
Test Kayon's editing skills here. Do you want me to say it for you now, or do you want to just cue me up?
Yeah. What's your last name?
Tiesenga.
Tiesenga.
Like I'm teasing you.
Okay.
Like that's what my
Tiesenga.
grandpa always said. Yeah, giving you a hard time.
All right, we'll keep it.
That's
All right,
no,
we'll
it's
keep
good.
it.
It's we're talking about story and my journey today, and that is part of my journey is the difficulty with my last name and the number of nicknames. So
yeah, luckily I don't have to deal with that. Mine's pretty generic, John James. Like it's very easy to, gets me in a lot of interviews and stuff. And
yeah.
No, but that's great. So before we get started,
Yeah.
I have a quote for us.
Great.
All right. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Mm-hmm. That's Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of fitting. We're talking about storytelling, right? So Mike, why don't you tell us about your organization, how you got started, and how long you've been in your role?
Yeah. First of all, Maya Angelou, one of the GOATs. Just love her writing. Appreciate that. I was excited to see that quote on the top of the questions you sent me. But
I had to look for a little bit. I was I need a good one. If Mike's going to be here, I need a good one.
Well, but you're already doing storytelling here too. That whole intro is about connecting through story, which is really, feel really aligned with you missionally on this podcast, which is cool. But yeah, I am the founder and all of the other pieces of a corporation of Forerunner Story Company. Launched this summer. It is brand new, it's been an idea that I've had for a long time in one way or another. And it was kind of the process of seeing it come to fruition, and we're still the very baby stages, baby stages. Have a 5-week-old at home. So it's a lot of my life right now.
Literally baby.
Going through this is the baby stage. So Forerunner Story Company is, in diapers still and being bottle fed and all those fun things. But yeah, the idea came. So I, my whole journey right now, where are we at in this? You just want to tell me what I do.
What inspired you to start this journey?
Yep. Thank you. So I will get more into like my own journey, but really it all leads to this point where I have come to believe that storytelling, which is a popular word right now, right? It's all the rage, but using story as a means to tell how things are, why things are, but also the different perspectives that come to story lead to a means of connecting. Now that could be connecting in a personal way with your own journey and understanding, okay, why am I the way I am and where might I be going based on the story up till this point? Or it could be in, marketing, which is where I think we see a lot of storytelling lingo is how do you tell not only your story, but a story that helps your audience see how they fit in so you can be aligned to, pursue your business aspirations. So I just saw a lot of possibility in the personal and the business world. And, like I said, I've been thinking about it for a while, and enough things lined up in my life where I was like, talk with my wife, like, all right, let's go for it. This is the time to go for it. And we're going to find out, and it will be a story in and of itself wherever it goes.
That's nice. I really like that. And it's really brave of you too. Like it takes some courage to say, you know what, we're going to do this and just take a risk and start something new. And, I know you, I've known you since the beginning of Leadership Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
So little backstory. I know Mike from Leadership Kalamazoo 2024. He's in the same cohort as me.
Best class ever.
Yes, best class ever. In case anybody asks, we're the only ones with branded merch. You'll see in the picture he has on a shirt.
Shout out Jake.
2023 and below could never. So, yeah, Jake's cool. Yeah. He's pretty cool. It's like this running joke from the. It's good. Anyway, so could you share your academic and career journey with us? What led you to this point?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. My journey is a meandering and wandering one, which I think about often. And sometimes I get frustrated by it because the story I tell about other people is it seems like they had it figured out and it's linear. I know it's not actually true, but so I grew up in a small rural area up northeast of Grand Rapids and went to a tiny little Christian school up there, K-5, where I think we had like 60 people in the whole school. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those things like my grandfather founded it. It's like where all my cousins, it was just like one of those things, like I say that out loud, I'm like, sounds kind of weird. But it was really good. Like it was really good. And I had great friends there. And then we shifted to a bigger school system in middle school and high school and went up through the Christian school system in Grand Rapids, and parents made a ton of sacrifices for that. And I feel really grateful for that. It was really formative in a number of ways. And then a lot of my friends, and I say this, and I don't mean it as any sort of shade, but a ton of my friends were going to like the local Christian college. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I was like, we got to expand horizons.
New experience.
Yeah. And so my dream was always to go to the University of Michigan. I didn't know how academically prestigious it was, which sounds kind of crazy. But I just wanted to go to their football games because my dad was a diehard Michigan football fan, loved Michigan football, had vague memories of the championship 97-98 team. And I was like, just want to go to football games. And I thought I wanted to be an engineer. So I was taking all these pre-engineering and design classes in high school and got to the point of applying. And I applied to 3 schools, applied to Michigan Tech, way up in the UP, applied to a small engineering college I had some family that went to in Texas, in Longview, Texas.
Okay.
And I applied to U of M. And none of this would I recommend to our listeners. You should do a better job of applying and checking out your options. But this is just how I went, and got into the first 2 pretty quick, and had some decent scholarship offers where it would have been nice. And then waited. I was like, man, I'm not going to get to go. And it was setting in, and finally the big old packet. I don't even know if they send those big mailer packets anymore when the kids get into schools. This thing is like 5-pound envelope of papers, and finally I was like, congratulations. And I was getting to go to my dream school, getting to go to University of Michigan, and got into the College of Engineering. And, when I applied there, the other 2 schools were primarily engineering schools. You could do other things, but in the back of my mind, I was like, if I can get into U of M and the College of Engineering, which is one of the more difficult schools to get into, I always can fall back and do some sort of general studies or something like that, which is crazy to think about as a high school kid. Just like, oh yeah, I'll get into Michigan and I'll switch, which is insane. And my grades were not like the top or anything like that. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, guess I was supposed to be at U of M. Got in, went there, started engineering, hated it. Absolutely. Like coding broke me in a bad way.
Yeah.
And, and in some ways, high school was pretty easy for me the way it was taught. And so suddenly having to learn to study, learn to figure out how I understand material for myself just was super hard for me. And so suddenly, I went from, like I said, my grades weren't awesome, but I was near the top of my class in high school, to now I'm just like an average, getting dragged up the curve at Michigan and feeling really lost and small and not knowing if I have what it takes. And, some of what happened there too. So on a more personal note, my freshman year, the day I moved into college, my grandfather, who I grew up living next door to, he passed away before I even moved in. And that just it's a rough way to start college. Yeah. Like just having to go through it before I even had my first class. And I was trying to figure that out, and this role model, this mentor. And then my sophomore year, or end of my freshman year, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he passed away my sophomore year of college. So I'm drowning in the studies, trying to figure out what on earth I'm doing, hating my schoolwork. And meanwhile, life at home is just like, I'm heartbroken.
Right.
I'm in agony. But I remember at one point, my sophomore year, before my dad passed, I was chatting with him. I was like, is it okay if I'm not an engineer? Mm-hmm. I have an uncle who works at Ford. I have other people, and I just thought like I had to do this. My parents didn't put that on me at all. Yeah. I just had this idea in my head. They're like, we'll support you in whatever you do. Mm-hmm. Why? Yeah. I was like, oh, I felt so much relief. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, oh, good. Like I don't like this at all. But my grades had taken a big hit because I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to ask for help either. Mm-hmm. And so I was on academic probation for 3 semesters. Mm-hmm. So then they don't let you transfer from college to college at University of Michigan unless you get your GPA right. So I had to stay in the College of Engineering, take a couple College of Engineering classes, and take some other classes from the College of Literature, Sciences, and the Arts, and eventually help. And the awesome part is just shout out to the dean's office there. I finally got called in one time. They're like, what is going on? Mm. And I shared with them everything, like, why didn't you ask for help? I was like, I didn't know I could. Right. Because the atmosphere on campus is sort of like amongst the students. The staff are fantastic, but the students are like, you got to be alpha. You got to be the top dog. You got to figure this all out yourself. But the professors and the faculty there were just extraordinary and just saying, like, none of that's actually reality. Mm-hmm. Like, we're here to help you. And they helped a ton and just helped me make those decisions. Shortening this story up, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to get out of there. And I remember having this moment where I was kind of grieving the loss of earning potential leaving engineering, because you can do all right for yourself if you're an engineer from Michigan. But I remember thinking, I don't care how much you pay me. I don't want to be an engineer. Mm-hmm. Not worth it to me. But I had just had this sort of simple thought in my mind of like, I just want to help people communicate things that matter. And I don't even know, like, it was just like, wow. That's been in my mind ever since then. That's 16 years now since that happened. And so I kind of meandered around. I tried communications, didn't love those classes, and I ended up in a history class, and I fell in love with history. And I liked history in high school, but I didn't mind the reading, didn't mind the writing. I loved the way it was taught, where you just got to think and try to reason things. And graduated with a history degree from University of Michigan in 2011 after 5 years there, and still didn't know what I wanted to do. During the latter part of my college career, I had gotten involved with a church there in Ann Arbor, which just tons of stories there, but that just really helped my life too. Like the faculty, the people there just caring for me and helping me deal with like the grief and the loss of my dad and my grandpa. And there's an opportunity to go work there. I was like, well, I guess they have a belief in sharing things that matter and helping people. And I saw a need for caring for other students who were going through hard things. And I thought, well, if my story can help somebody else who's having a hard time in college grow and go through that, then I can go do that too. And so worked in college ministry for 7 years over there. And then we moved to do some work here at Western. That's how we ended up in Kalamazoo. And then as I was here, I just had more of an itch of like, I wonder if there's other ways to engage with story. And I started to really discover my passion for that in this job, and ended up working at a marketing company for a couple of years, which was a great experience, great team. But even there, I was like, I felt like there was an in-between. It's like, I want to be able to just kind of, I desired the independence to work with the clients that I wanted to work with and for, and have a little more creative control. And obviously wanted to serve clients and do what they want to do. But that's really what led me to start Forerunner. And so I appreciate your words about being brave and courageous, because I don't feel that very often. But something happened. So we have 3 kids, and my son was born in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And it's something just stirred in me, and it's happened with our second and third child too, where I realized I wanted to be the type of dad that lived out the life that I wanted them to live. Be like, hey, like sometimes if you have a dream, or if there's something that you believe you're supposed to do, even if it's scary, like go do it. And I wanted to be able to have the story and the track record to say, look, mom and dad did the same thing, even though like scared us and it didn't make a lot of sense at times. We also tried to live this out, not to put pressure, but to just be an example to hopefully like inspire them and maybe some others too. So anyway, that's where Forerunner Story Company came from, in a longer than I would have hoped for a way.
No, thank you for that. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that story. There's when you got to school the like kind of culture shock of this is what it's like now, being a student, having to learn how to study, all those things. Then, and all these things are reasons why students might not be successful. So this also speaks to being resilient. So you got to school, had a shock, then loss. A lot of people stopped going to school because of the loss twice.
Yeah.
Then, and I'm sorry for your loss as well.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah.
And then being kind of stuck, where you're stuck in a degree or major that you have to get to a certain point before, okay, I can get out of this. Like when I got to the end of my degree, I was kind of like, I don't really want to do this, but
right.
I'm not going to switch and go like another 3-4 years for something else. So it's like, all right, I just got to tough this out. So that's 4 different things where lots of other students might have just said, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm done with school. But you got support. So you got the support from staff, from the church, from where you were at. And so there's also like kind of a turning point where it's, okay, what supports did you get? What support did you have? And then just knowing like, oh, I can ask for this.
Yeah.
I can get help. And it's kind of counterculture where like, it's kind of like a dog eat dog world, you know? Yeah. But it doesn't have to be like that. And there's so many people who will help you through these things. So I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's a lot. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think you're brave and courageous and, you know, all that.
Thank you.
So, we'll go to the next question so we can quit being so sad. Well, that's for me. That's for me.
It's all good. If we need to just like get a sad podcast, we can get real into it if you want.
Okay.
But we can keep going
all right,
too.
We'll save that for yours.
Yeah, so, sounds good. Yeah. When I fire mine up.
My coworkers have a history of talking crazy about me when I tear up a little bit. I had that happen at an awards ceremony, and never again. You will never see my eye break, as Dr. John would put it. It'll never happen again. But anyway, next question. Yeah. How does being a Kalamazoo resident influence your work and the stories you help tell?
Yeah. So I loved Ann Arbor.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I loved that I went to U of M, and I knew we were supposed to come to Kalamazoo.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of stories there that I won't get into right now. And in some ways, though, I knew we were supposed to come here, but I didn't necessarily know why. I didn't know much about Kalamazoo. Everyone was like, "Oh, you're back to the west side." I was like, 269 is not 616. Like Grand Rapids is different than Kalamazoo, and vice versa, in a good way. And it took a while for us to feel like home here, but it began happening in just really cool ways where, we moved here because our heart was just to love this place and to find out what it was about, and just ultimately to see Kalamazoo thrive and flourish in whatever little part we can't do all of that. It takes a community, which I think we'll get into in this conversation. But, it started with my wife. She was a phlebotomist over at the cancer center when we first moved here, and she would walk to this coffee shop and the barista would just take a genuine interest in her. And that was powerful. And then as I was wrestling with, what do I want to do, and telling stories, is that being a filmmaker? Is it like being an editor? Is it being a writer? It's taken all sorts of different forms along the way. We just met people who were so, so kind and supportive and generous. And I made some mistakes along the way, and just like trying to figure some things out. I think I was in a hurry a little bit to get to places without actually, seeing where I really was and taking the time. That's part of growing and maturing and learning, is just like, oh, I messed up. How did I do this different? And what's that story teaching me? But what I see in Kalamazoo is a city that, if there were kind of 2 people we met. There are people who are like, why would you come to Kalamazoo? We definitely met those. Like, there's nothing here. People who are just like clearly over it, trying to get out. But by and large, we experienced these people who are like, you're here to love Kalamazoo. Welcome. We're going to make this place great. And we would see that from the grocery store to the restaurants we went into to, places we volunteered, to schools, to like people at Western love Western. That was like just so cool. And we were so excited to be knit in there, and so
Go Broncos.
to love that campus. Yeah, go Broncos. Yeah, I got no problem with that.
I didn't say go blue earlier.
That's okay.
You know, we hear enough of that.
Yeah, well, and that was like I had to learn. You know, Michigan. I love going there. In some ways, I felt like a stranger there because my family really just taught like servant leadership. And so, like, yeah, hail the victors, leaders and best, all those things. But in some ways, it always got under my skin. Just like, I just don't like to beat my chest. And, like, I was like, yeah, I'll root for the football team and go nuts. But just coming here was such a gift to just see, like, yeah, on the surface, right, the stories that might be portrayed are different, or there's this big dichotomy. But there's just, like, real people trying to really figure it out and make a difference in the world everywhere you go. And so I think as I began to meet people and hear their stories more and more, especially, you know, working with college students, like that was most of my job, was just sit, hear their stories, hear their journey. You know, college is a tumultuous time where they're trying to figure out, who am I? What do I care about? What do I want to be? I think they feel unnecessary pressure. I did to like have it figured out by the time I'm 22 when I graduate. I'm in my mid-30s, and like I feel like I'm just now like stepping into some of like, oh, this is what I was made for in a sense. But just seeing the way the opportunity coming to a new city, having to meet new people and learn a new culture really had a shape of like, there are stories to be told here that I don't think are being told. And Kalamazoo just kind of wears it in a really honest and sincere, just who they are, who we are in a real sense. And, you know, I don't think we thought we would be here for a while. My wife was applying to grad school. I thought we were out of here in 1 or 2 years. And here we are almost 7 years later. And we're dreaming about what if we raise our family here, if we're here. Like, who knows what life brings, but we're like, this is home. We're like so pumped to be a part of Kalamazoo and to see this city with so many things going on that I feel like I learned something new every day of like, wow, this place is awesome. You know, where my wife works, they often talk about how Kalamazoo punches above its weight. You know, it's not a huge city population-wise, but the offerings here and what we're trying to do to influence the state, the country, the world to make it a better place are just dynamic. And those are the stories that I want to tell. You know, if I used to joke, if I could take over from Mike Rowe on Dirty Jobs, I would love to do that. Like, let's just tell stories and figure out how to do that and help people connect and see things behind the scenes that they might not normally see, to bring connection, which is what you're doing with this podcast, to bring awareness, to help people say, oh, yeah, we might disagree on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we are people with hopes and dreams who we want to see life go well. And, okay, we can find some commonality in that. We share at least a meta narrative in that regard. We might take different paths to get there, but we want to see life be better for ourselves and for those after us. And I don't know if I answered your question there. But
no, you did. You did. I know one thing I've been hearing a lot lately is Kalamazoo is like an experiment.
Yeah.
Where we try so many different things and see what sticks, and then just keep it going. Kind of like The Promise, you know, just dropped off, you know, here's money for college. What are you going to do with it? And then it's turned into this. We just had the RX Kids thing announced, which now I know how the parents who wouldn't be getting The Promise felt, because our son's going to be born this year and not next year. But, you know, it's fine. I don't feel any type of way about it. It's a great thing. No, but I'd love to hear that narrative about Kalamazoo, rather than, you know, like you did say, it's kind of either why are you there, or, you know, we love this place. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we're going to the community engagement and collaboration section. What are your community-based connections to Kalamazoo? I feel like I have a typo in there. And how does it relate to your work at Forerunner Story Company?
Yeah, it's I still feel really new here. You know, we've been here 7 years, and mentioned the meandering story that I feel like my life has been. Like, most of my connections have been on campus, just meeting people at different orgs there. And I felt like I was hanging out with like the up and coming workforce. And now it's connecting there, or it's through Leadership Kalamazoo, or a lot of it's vicariously through where my wife works. Like, oh yeah, you're connected. And so I can kind of get in, like, she's my, is your name on the list? No, but my wife's name is, so I can kind of connect that way. And, Yeah, so it's interesting. Like I feel like I can't like bring in like this big resume of all these names I'm connected to, but just trying to like genuinely and earnestly look to like love and serve. Like I'm so grateful to like be connected with you and the promise, and have like it's kind of an idea of like I see the promise. What is the promise? How are they doing storytelling? Do they need any help? Like how do we help the promise really like become the dream that they want to be here? Not that I can do all of that, but just having a heart to like serve and come alongside people to like champion them to like, hey, where are you trying to go? Let's get there. And let's try to do this with great communication, connecting with who you want to connect with. But also, you know, when we first moved here, this story's coming to mind. I wanted to find the barber that was as close to where I physically lived as possible. Just like, let me be in my neighborhood, and got to know just awesome small business owner, just super. And it was fun because I was like the only white guy that went there, which was just like, you know, and it was definitely stretching for me. I think it was probably stretching for them too in some ways, but I was like, okay, this is so good for me to see things from a different angle. It's like walk into a room and be the only white guy in here for a while. But also like we just had honest conversations. And so, you know, even just asking them and just building the trust there over time of like fumbling through the awkwardness with genuineness. And it's just like, hey, I might be off on this, but I saw this, and, you know, 2020 was wild and it's like the world, it's not like we're solved or out of those things that we struggled with, our countries had going on for a long time, but just to have a place of honest connections and conversations. So those are my community connections. Of just like neighbors, honest conversations, people that like you might not see on some like up and comer in Kalamazoo list, but the people who are like working in local communities. And that's kind of my angle that I come at, is how can I just meet people who are behind the scenes? They're having an impact that people might not know about, but they're trying to make an honest way, but also have dreams and hopes and want to see good things happen.
Yeah. I wish we could get some clips from your experience in the barbershop.
Oh man, it was awesome. It was awesome.
No, but that's really cool. Like even the fact that you were like, I'm going to go here. Like a lot of people would say, I'm not, you know, I don't feel like I should be in here. But the fact that you say, you know what, I'm going to find the closest place to me, get to know these people, and still be part of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Yeah. And then I had a question, and now it's gone.
It's all right.
I lost it. I'm doing so bad today. I'm like 0 for 3. All right. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, it'll come back if it matters. Yeah, there it is.
Did you get a good haircut?
Oh, great haircut.
Yeah.
Great haircut. Great haircut. Yeah, and it was funny too, because I was like, I had heard stories from some of my black friends like where they couldn't find a good place to get a haircut at times because it was like white people hair is different, right? In the same way, I was like, oh my goodness, this is like the other way around. Like my barber's like, the first time I walked in, he's like digging out clippers he hasn't used in a minute, and my hair is different. But he did a great job, great place. Would highly recommend checking that place out. And it was just fun because I had other friends who moved in. I was just like, hey, they give a great haircut. They're awesome dudes. They care about Kalamazoo. You're gonna just hear and learn things. It's just a great way to expand your horizons of like the conversations they're having are different than I might have had in my own little echo chamber if I wanted to stay safe. And I'm just so grateful for there. Nice. But yeah, great haircut. Great haircut.
That was my question.
Yeah.
All right. How do you collaborate? I mean, you kind of already touched on this, but how do you collaborate with other organizations or local institutions in Kalamazoo to amplify community stories?
Yeah, this is still aspirational, right? Forerunner, still in the infant stage, still up and coming. But I try to just ask lots of questions and try to look for ways that I can advance what someone's trying to do in a meaningful way. I have really tried to press out of this idea of like scarcity, like get away from that as much as possible, that like, or zero sum, right? Where it's like, oh, if you win, I lose. I've seen that be really self-defeating in my life and others, and just trying to say like, is there a way that we can both win, or that we can both push this forward in a common way where we can succeed together? And so I know it's really vague and more philosophical than practical. But that's just my heart as I launch Forerunner, to be able to come alongside and say, hey, I'm not here to compete. I think there's enough here. We have to get creative. We might have to figure out how to do this a little bit differently. But that's I guess the how I would want to come alongside of just say, hey, what can I offer here? You know, I have a meeting with a potential client coming up here soon, and I don't anticipate there's like, it's not gonna be like, not Landon Stryker, which is, it's a whole other thing, whatever. Like some huge company just has like lots of capital to like hire somebody. But I'm excited because I think when you have more limited resources, you get to be creative. And sometimes the best things can come out of those spaces. And so, and just believing that there's opportunity there to be had. So that, and I'm hoping stuff comes out of our cohort. Like I just love that class a ton, and the potential there of how do we highlight these stories here for those who would want to have impacts beyond their scope, and just really trying to build as many bridges as possible through conversation, through invitation, hospitality. That's something I've been thinking about a lot, is how do we use good communication as a form of hospitality. I read this book, and the author talked about how the best singer-songwriters that he would go and see, the audience feels like they're sitting in their living room, because the singer-songwriter just shows them how, here's what you can expect in this time. Welcome in. You are a part of this experience. It's not just you're paying to see me here, which those are fun concerts too, right? The big mega stadiums. But the sense was like, we are together a part of something. And how do we use communication in a way that removes as many barriers as possible, so people know how to belong, how to participate, and how to collaborate, even in the situation that feels like maybe it's a one-way thing at the outset.
I like that. And then even you're really speaking to collaboration, like how do we work together? I know like just last week when we were at Western, and they were talking about how, this has been the first increase in like student retention and everything in the last 10 years. And they kind of explain how this benefits Kalamazoo as a whole. The more students that are going there, the more money that comes into the city, the more, that leads to this and this and this and this. And it's, how do we become a part of that? How do we benefit from that? And that's kind of seeing the big picture of things. So I think we're going to skip ahead a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's the most powerful story you've encountered in your work? Oh man. It's a big question.
I must have missed that one on the prep notes.
It's a lot of questions.
The most powerful story I've encountered in my work.
And we can come back to that one too if you.
Yeah, let me think on that a second.
Okay.
Let that percolate.
Okay. What has motivated you throughout your career, and how do stories you encounter daily influence your personal and professional growth?
Yeah. The phrase that comes to mind is there's something more. The idea of it doesn't have to just be this. Now, that's not easy for me, right? Just yesterday when I mentioned, things are delayed. I was just like, man, come on. I had this all set up. We were going this way. Everything's fine. But just when the moment where you can like, oh, wait, this is a good story, right? Okay, now this is the conflict I'm facing in my own life. So how am I going to overcome this? And there will be a lesson in that I can partake, that I can impart some other time down the road. And it might not be for me. And I think that that's been helpful, this idea of there's something more and it might take a while. I can't think of the poet's name. It'll come to me later. Wow. I think about it all the time. Anyway, but there's a line in this poem that says plant sequoias. And I don't know if you've ever seen sequoias, but the biggest trees in the world.
Yeah, huge ones, right?
But they are, if you plant a sequoia, you're not going to see it be what it will become. And just having this mindset of thinking beyond myself, even a generation or two. And obviously we can't make that happen, but what are the deposits I'm making that might bear fruit way, way, way down the road?
Is it Wendell Berry?
Yeah, Wendell Berry. Thank you. I was like, it's like the Mad Farmer's Manifesto is the poem, I think, and which is and if you get a chance to read Wendell Berry, a friend of mine introduced him to me recently, and he sees the world in such a, from my perspective, an accurate way where it's not black and white, where there's ups and downs and there's nuance, and he just can articulate it in a very clear and digestible way.
This is good stuff. I'm going to have to use a Wendell Berry quote next time. And then, it'll be, foreshadow to the next podcast.
Yeah.
Forerunner,
There we go.
Got a little bit of that, All right. If you could transform one thing in the Kalamazoo community, what would it be?
I feel like I don't know enough. I feel like sometimes you come on these podcasts, like I go on a lot of podcasts. But people just get talking like, I do this, and this. They just don't know the reality. So I think for me, it's speaking from an outsider looking in at just things that I care about. And I think one thing I care about, don't go down that road. Figuring out to increase collaboration while embracing the pain points. And there are many in our community that I think a lot of us could list off, but embracing them in a way that are unique, in a way that allows us to grow in our own community storytelling. And maybe not even trying to solve them in the classic ways, but just being willing to think generatively. Is there a new way to do this? I think a lot of that happens here. I think there's a lot of stuff happening in Kalamazoo. It's like, is there a new way to do this? The Promise is the first one of these. Now people, they're popping up everywhere. It's like, we got this thing. It's like, well, this little town called Kalamazoo, they're trying it. It's this experiment. And so I think just what if we embrace this, and Western talks about this, their experiential learning. What if we as a community were bought into, hey, Kalamazoo is this experiential experiment where, we can't solve all the world's problems. I think there's always going to be stuff, but there are new ways to engage with them and embrace the nuance of life of, okay, people lose jobs. People go through hardships, things like that. But how do we raise the floor so that the distance that people drop is higher, but at the same time elevate a ceiling where people can go further and more people can go further, which I guess is like justice and equity, right? So I feel like I'm being more philosophical than practical, and I love practicality.
No, that makes sense.
So I don't have the answer for it, but just a sense of like, how do we just say, yeah, let's just be honest about our shortcomings here. Let's not ignore them and figure out how to work together, maybe in self-sacrificing ways. Like maybe we get inspired by people who give crazy amounts of in perpetuity endowments to allow all high school graduates to go to college. Maybe we say, okay, I can't do something like that, but where can I pass on that radical generosity? It's the planting sequoias, right?
Yeah.
It's the like, where can I invest in something that like I believe in this, and who can I bring in to do this with me that I don't know from? So I think just laying down, this has to be like my thing or that's their thing, and figuring out how can we help each other succeed in ways that aren't so competitive. Not that competition's bad, but just I think sometimes it gets in the way of like, well, I got to put my company's logo on this, so I can't share credit, or I don't know how to do this, right? I don't know how to do this. Like, let's figure out how to do it. Let's figure out how multiple people who care about this can move forward in a way rather than just like choosing to not do it because it feels hard and messy.
I like it. I like the answer. I mean, we've had people who say like, "Oh, this needs to happen," or "This needs to happen." It's all going towards the same goal. Kind of like you were saying, like it's to fix things, and we all have different approaches, but let's take one, see if it works. Take another, see if it works, and if it does, and stick with it. But we still have to be able to adapt, change, all those things.
I think one thing I would add is just having a way for the everyday person to see how they make a difference. So it's not just the people who are business owners, who are higher stakeholders, whatever. Let's look at the average person from any of the communities, the neighborhoods in Kalamazoo. They know how they play a part of the story. They're not just background characters. I think if we could figure out a way, and obviously people have to choose, you have to opt in. People have to take ownership, say, I'm going to be a part of making this better. But if there were fewer barriers to entry where they could say, oh, okay, I'm a father of 3 kids living in the Westwood neighborhood. This is how I invest in Kalamazoo. Or I'm a grandfather in the Edison neighborhood. This is how I get to come play a part in making this a better place here. And then also exploring the ways that can be unique, where it's not just like one line, this is your lane, but just helping people understand, okay, there's a way that I can help this community flourish too.
I love it. All right, where do you see the future of Forerunner going?
Oh man.
Another big question.
Yeah. I still haven't thought of like the most impactful story.
Hey, it's fine. We got a lot of questions left, and
I know. I'm like, what are we at? Like, this is a 3 hour, your first 3 hour podcast. You brought someone verbose.
I mean, we should have known. Storytelling.
I know.
We should have known.
Yeah, should have known. Feel free to edit out whatever you need to. But okay, the future. I think if I could, in summary, I would get to. My motivation is that Forerunner becomes something that supports my families and other families around me. That's just like, I guess, the fiscal goal of like, if this is something that would support my family and allow us to invest in the way that helps other families move forward with their hopes and dreams. But from the work that I do, if I could be a part of helping people communicate more clearly with their intended audience, whether that's with themselves, right? Because we talk to ourselves all the time, or it's teams, or it's businesses, business to business, business to consumer, in a way that is sincere, but helps encapsulate the uniqueness of each communicator. If I could just help communication be done better in a compelling and honest way, to help people see the broader story that, you know, they're communicating and a part of, that would be awesome. Just be like, oh man, we worked with Forerunner Story Company. We understand our story better. We can communicate it better. And now the people who are aligned with us missionally or with our vision or with our product, we're in together. Like that would just find that synergy of, oh yeah, I want to be a part of this because they're going where I want to go. And that's kind of the idea of Forerunner too, of like leading a way, going someplace into the unknown or carving a path. And yeah.
I like it. I mean, it definitely, even thinking about like my own story and everything, like while I've been here when I go and I talk to people about the promise and how great it is and how I used it and how my kids will use it. And, you know, I had to kind of form my own story and how to tell it, how to phrase it, how to present it. But, you know, I'm like 3 years in, and it was kind of like a process of, like when I do speak to people, what sticks, what stands out to them. And then even learning, okay, how do I present this to different groups of people? I mean, we went and we talked to some youth and like talked about the promise and my story. And then the kids were saying what stuck out to them. And one of them was like, well, you went to school so you could take care of your son. And then I was like, oh, like I didn't even think that was something that would stick out or something that they would say. And then like there's been different things from other groups. There's been questions that come up that I try to answer while I present. But it's been a learning process. Yeah. And I'm still like, okay, is this how I want to say it to this group that I'm presenting to? What do I take out? What do I kind of say more of? What's beneficial? So I can see the benefit of having someone help walk you through that process.
Yeah. And it is a learning process. It's a learning process. And then there are those times where it's even with your best intentions, sometimes the story will hit with someone in a way that you didn't even imagine. It might have just been the way you delivered it. Like a day, where your eye broke. Is that what Dr. John would say? Yeah. Like maybe just that little bit of like emotion coming through. It's like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a grown man shed a tear. And like, that might be the story. It might be the words you say. Right. And so
it was groundbreaking when I broke my eye in front of those people.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking. When I was breaking my eye.
Groundbreaking your eye. That's right.
Our producer is chiming in here.
the tears of change.
Right. Anyway, what are some of your favorite stories, some of your favorite places or things to do in Kalamazoo?
Oh my goodness. So many favorite stories. My wife and I, you know, she's on maternity leave with our youngest right now, and we're currently rewatching through the Infinity Saga for Marvel. Yep. And it's I love those movies so much. Like I think they may be overplayed, but there's a reason people love them. We're kind of watching, it's like, man, there's There's some good stuff, especially in those first movies.
Like years.
Yeah, years.
I don't know when the first Marvel movie dropped.
The first Iron Man came out in 2008. Yeah.
That's a long time to be telling a story, like to lead up to that.
And the thing is, what's crazy is some of the writing in that movie, they're foreshadowing to Endgame. And I've appreciated that. I was like, oh, wow. Like, I'm sure they had to figure some stuff out along the way because, that's what life is. But some of they had intentionality. And so that's really good. Love the Lord of the Rings. Like, my Instagram feed is full of way too many Lord of the Rings memes, but they're good. They're good. And then, so I just love a good story. And I love documentaries, or documentary type TV shows. Like I mentioned Dirty Jobs earlier. Like I was like, oh, he's just trying to get people to tell their story of like, yeah, you've been doing this thing that a lot of people look down on, maybe, or maybe not even aware of, but it helps life happen. Yeah, and I think that's really cool. Favorite place in Kalamazoo. Oh man, any coffee shop. I spend a lot of time at the coffee, especially if they're the local ones. Factory, Water Street, even Five Lakes, up on West Main. Five Lakes caramel vanilla latte. This is a free plug for them, I guess. It is. It's
or the white chocolate mocha.
Oh yeah, it is it is so good. It is so good. Yeah, but then like Toba, like it's just any good food, any good place where you can sit down and have a conversation. Good food. We don't go out a lot with like 3 kids, 4 and under. Right. Like it's a little chaotic.
It
but
adds up too.
I also this last one, the Ashtamo Park and the Lillian Anderson Arboretum, just a good place to go for a walk out there. A little out of town. Like you need a car, it'd be a longer bike ride, but just grateful that we have those around here. Beautiful places just to get kind of quiet and go for a walk. So we spent a lot of time at the library too, getting books for the kids and all that stuff. Just grateful for those.
Nice. I'm gonna have to check out that Arboretum. I haven't.
Yeah,
that's the first time I heard of that.
Yeah. Walk down the Frog Pond. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. Okay. It's great in the winter too. It's a little treacherous, but it's really beautiful.
All right, I'll check it out. Let's see. I think you've answered this question already. Okay, we'll skip to this one. This is one of the big ones.
Oh gosh, I haven't. We got like how many big ones do we have on hold right now?
I'm sorry, they're all big questions.
No, I love it.
What golden nugget of wisdom would you share with someone aspiring to follow in your footsteps?
Oh my gosh, I don't feel like I'm that wise. No,
you are. I've taken notes.
Okay.
We've had conversations. I'm like, even places to go check out.
Yeah, I think the plant sequoias, but I think having the long view, and this is something that a friend of mine told me years ago, and he said, you're never stuck. If you feel stuck, consider what costs you might be unwilling to pay to get unstuck. Because a lot of times there's like a fear there. And fear is usually telling us a story of like, maybe it's not personally, but it's like, well, if I go down this path, I know about so-and-so. And when they did that, a bad thing happened. And we're trying to avoid pain. I'm not saying like, don't intentionally go into pain, but there's something about growth that's painful and uncomfortable. And I think for me, and this is something I've had to tell myself a lot of like, it's okay. Like my wife and I, plant sequoias, but just like, there's more joy coming. Right. There's some truth to like the phrase, like if you ever had a coach who's like, no pain, no gain. Like there's some truth to that. Like if you're going to like work out or exercise, it's going to hurt.
Right.
But it's with a hope of something better coming. And so just, and any, we have so many like little sayings that help our family keep going. We have one that's just like not dead yet. Like when you do something hard, it's like, I'm not dead yet. Like it's just a chance to like get up again and to like, okay, that didn't kill me. Because a lot of times like, oh my goodness, like if I was talking to some when I work with college students, so like, hey, can you like, they like get on the phone and call somebody, like that will kill me. It's like, it's not going to kill you. It feels like it might.
It feels like it.
And like, but allowing, like we can poke fun, but then, okay, trying to enter that space of like, we go through little deaths all the time. Emotional deaths, social deaths, relational deaths, just expectation deaths. And just like, it's okay, but we come back every time. And I guess, eventually not to get morbid, but eventually, we pass. But it's just a sense of like, more often than not, okay, this is another quote. I'm sorry, this is how my brain works. Like if you look at my strength finder, it's like connectedness and a ranger. So it's like do and my brain never stops. Oh gosh, there's a storytelling principle. I think it's one of the Greek philosophers. You can fact check me here, but it's just like the treasure you seek is in the cave you are most afraid to go in. That's paraphrased. And I think a lot of times we know kind of that next step, but it scares us to death. But that is where growth comes. And that's storytelling, right? If you watch any good story, you know what that main character needs right away. And they're going to get confronted with their greatest fear or thing they least want in order for them to grow in that movie, right? And if there is no change, if there is no growth, we don't watch it again. You're like, there's no plot. Exactly, because that's not real life. But we are drawn to the things that resonate with us and say, oh, okay, is there a way I can apply that to my life? So I just gave you a whole smattering of little
I like it.
Little pieces of dust. Maybe there's a nugget there.
I looked it up. It's the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And it's Joseph Campbell.
Oh yeah, he's a famous storyteller.
Yeah,
so
American writer, professor of literature, and also an advisor to George Lucas, another storyteller.
So not a Greek philosopher.
Well, I mean, maybe he got it from that. We don't know.
Plato's rolling over to his grave, like,
right.
Hey, Joseph, don't you take credit for that?
Maybe that's just that version of it. But yeah. Yep, the amplified version. Oh gosh, our producer is cutting up today.
Oh no.
How can? Sorry, that
was really good.
How can individuals in the community get involved with Forerunner and engage with your work?
If you see a 6'6" white guy walking around, it's probably me. Although we're close to a lot of Dutch people. Just go, yo, Mike. No, so forerunnerstoryco.com. That's our website, and you'll see different places you can request a free consultation. So the first time you work with Forerunner, we'll hop on a video call, or maybe we can grab coffee at one of those local coffee shops and just kind of talk about, hey, how can we serve you? How can we help you communicate what you want to communicate in a way that helps you achieve your goals? And even if you just have questions about what that could look like, definitely reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. Those are good ways too. Eventually, we'll have a whole social media suite, but like I said, because I'm the founder, CEO, media director, graphic designer, all the, little spread thin.
It's in the works.
So, yeah.
All right.
Reach out to me on any of those.
Do you have questions for us? And this is a producer too. He'll hop on the mic. He usually does.
Nice. I was curious, how have you guys seen this podcast benefit the work you all do and uplift the work The Promise does?
You got to get on the mic. You got to. I know, right? I can talk a little bit until he gets set up.
Yeah, stall for him.
So I would say, just personally, like running into people who have been on the podcast and they'll say like, "Oh, I'm famous because of you." And I'm like, "What? Famous?" I mean, I guess, but I've seen the more, like when I first started sharing the stories and stuff, I've seen growth since I've started doing them. Even in just like the likes or the comments and things like that. I think it is powerful for people to share their stories, for them to come on here and actually have a kind of like a venue to say, these are my experiences. And then I've grown from hearing these people. I mean, there's been people who've been on the podcast who are like CEO of this or, some high up position executive director. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to learn so I can be in a position like that? So it's been personal growth. It's been growth for other people just to be able to share their story. And we've had someone who was an intern helping out with the podcast, and now he produces the podcast. He is the producer. So you wanna share?
Is this thing on?
Oh, wow. Yep.
I'm sorry, repeat the question again.
Yeah, I was just curious how you guys have seen doing this podcast elevate your work, elevate the promise. How has it grown in whatever way you'd want to answer that?
I'd almost share the same sentiment as Jonathan. It's a lot of growth, not only in our professional work, but personally. I would say personally, just realizing, sounds a little, I don't know, maybe that's just me.
It's fine.
Okay. Or maybe it's the way it's coming through my headphones. I'd say personally, I experienced a lot of growth with just being able to witness the extent of my capabilities as far as being able to produce, as far as being able to create and publish, and knowing all the ins and outs of like the different podcasting platforms and stuff like that. So that I can be able to take that perhaps into my own personal venture should I choose to do so. I'd say for the promise as a whole, I think it's just exposed us to a different market of people and a different group of people who we partner with, but we don't necessarily know like really how they got there, or unless you know them personally. So to be able to give them an opportunity to come on our podcast, to be able to talk about their stories, talk about how they got to where they got to, it's like you're getting the chance to pretty much see those people, like you mentioned earlier, who are behind the scenes, who are making things happen for people in our community, but we don't get a chance to know how they get here, who had to help them so that they could help other people, and be able to just figure out how that all tracks is storytelling. Yeah. And I think that's been probably one of my biggest like themes since I've been in this role, is to tell the story of the promise, and that can be in different avenues, through our scholars, through our alumni, through our community and business partners, through the people that even work here. Anybody that interfaces with the promise or comes across with the promise, how do we tell their story? And recognizing that every story is not linear, and that even the story of the promise and how you're able to utilize that scholarship is not linear. We all, Jonathan, we probably have different journeys as to why, how we utilized our scholarship, but that's what makes it so unique, and that's what makes it so fun, because it's like you may be able to find someone who you relate to. And it's like we have like the different paths on our logo because they're just going in different directions, but you'll be able to find someone who you resonate with and whose story resonates with you. It's like, I actually see a little bit of myself in you. Yeah. So with this podcast, the goal is that people who are listening will be able to listen to the guests that we have. Even for scholars, alumni alike, they can be like, okay, this person works in this area that I want to work in. How did they get there? Oh, wow, I can see that I probably had some similar experiences to them. And just promoting that opportunity for people to just connect. It's a long answer, but yeah.
Well, yeah, now with how long the promise has been going, there's all these other branches.
Yeah.
It's either it's like the multiverse, the Kalamazoo Promise multiverse, right? There's all these different paths, or even just like we talk about planting sequoias. It's becoming this tree. There's more branches. There's more leaves, and eventually, right? Like what do trees do? They drop seeds, then more plant. Eventually, you have a forest. Yeah, and it's just like you're planting this forest of stories and caring for and tending it. That's awesome.
Yeah, especially with the 20th coming up. It's my biggest goal, or I guess my biggest thing that I've always been doing. With the team that I work with is like, let's continue to keep telling the story in any way that we can, whether that be through blogs, whether that be through podcasts, social media, photo, video. You can tell a lot of stories through photos and stuff like that. So whatever way we can, let's just do it.
Awesome. Can I ask one more?
Sure.
So one of the questions when I work with individuals to help them understand their own stories is, in order to, I'm giving away some of my process, so it might break it in the future. But
free trial.
It's just like, okay, sometimes we look at our own stories, we're too close to it. And you asked this already, but what are some of your favorite stories? Specifically, are there characters that you identify with, or themes and stories that you find yourself resonating with? I'll go first, give you guys a second. Okay. So like I mentioned Lord of the Rings, I mentioned Marvel, like there's other movies there too, but the characters I find myself resonating with are the ones who maybe they've experienced great loss in their life, but they still find themselves caring for a mission that feels bigger than themselves and often daunting, and they don't know if they have what it takes. And those are the stories I regularly come back to. It's like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, okay. So in this movie, this character has to overcome these obstacles. Okay, I can relate like to those types of things. There's a scene in the Lord of the Rings, I think it's The Return of the King. Yes. Where it's not actually in the book. It's in the movie where Elrond comes to Aragorn. He gives him the sword. He says, set aside the ranger and become who you were born to be. Paraphrasing. And that's just like so powerful. Basically, it's like it's time to grow up. And like embrace the responsibility that lies before you. So that's just something that's helpful for me when I want to just kind of like play it safe, pull back. So anyway, for you guys, what would you say those stories or characters or scenes might be?
I'd say a story that resonates with me is the story of people who did not realize that they needed something until they absolutely needed it. Kind of in my connection with The Promise and my journey utilizing the scholarship, going to school, and then having to, I didn't necessarily have like a connection with The Promise other than the fact that I was getting money to go to school. But it wasn't until like later in undergrad where I realized that they were having these support services for people who may have been struggling academically and whatnot. And at first, I wasn't the person to ask for help. I was the person to suffer in silence.
I hear you.
I was the person to suffer in silence, and I really wouldn't need help until it was time for me to need help. And then by that time, it's like, well, I have to go through a lot more to try to rectify situations where if I could have just asked in the first place, I could have got the help I needed. But even having to resonate with those stories of people who, who have to break out of their shell and have to, learn how to ask for help because they're so used to not, or they're wanting to try to handle everything themselves. But then them having a breakthrough as far as like, there are people that are actually available to help me.
Yeah.
If I lean into it and I am able to, trust that this is going to get me the help that I need, everything's going to be all right. So I find myself, even when I talk to people, even other Promise scholars alike, where it's like they have similar stories like that. They're not the ones to ask for help all the time. So then just being able to, offer that side of like, well, find the people that are going to help you. So that way it can help you practice to open up more, so that you won't feel like you have to take on everything yourself.
Yeah. Thank you.
For me, so I've got a bunch of kids, right? No, but our baby shower for Azarel, it was storybook themed. So everybody, instead of asking like for a card, we asked people to bring a book. And my brother, shout out to my brother, Marshall. I don't know how he did this, but he found this book, and it was called Jonathan James and the What If Monster. I had to look it up just to make sure I had the right title. But it was all about, if I go to the park, what if this happens? If I go to school, what if this happens? And the What If Monster was basically anything that could go wrong, that was going to happen. And the story leads on to say, what if I go and then this great thing happens? What if I go and then this amazing thing happens? And I feel like for a lot of my life before like school or even during school, I had that what if monster kind of like on my shoulder of, what if you don't graduate? What if this happens? What if it doesn't work out? And then eventually, once I got support and everything, then it was, what if, amazing things happen? So that's the story that I would use. So, yeah. And I didn't know about that book until 2 years ago. So, it's really cool. I mean, I don't know, you can learn a lot from stories, even children's stories where, you're not thinking like, oh, what, like I do that. I do say what if and get like nervous, anxious, avoid things just because something bad might happen. So,
yeah, but instead taking the time and the practice to reframe that. Just before we were on, I was like, oh man, I feel nervous. Like, oh, that's because you care. And I think that what if question indicates what we care about. And how do we frame it towards, okay, but what if you think of like the best possibility? That's cool. That's powerful. I'm glad there's kids' books like that.
Yeah, and it has my name on it, which is crazy. I don't know how he found that, but
you sure he didn't write it for you? Like your brother
became
an author?
It's an old book. It just happened to be Jonathan James.
Jonathan James and the What If Monster. I'm going to find that book. That's good. Get you to sign it for me.
Right. Did it right. Do you have any other questions?
I mean, there's so many questions, but I feel like we've got we've got lots here.
Okay.
We have to come back for a part 2 if you get desperate for content, which I doubt.
right.
I doubt you will. I doubt you will. This is. I just feel really grateful to even be invited to participate in this. I think it's really cool and really great, and yeah, I love the diversity of people you're getting on here, connecting the community. It's what I care about, and I see you doing that, and it inspires me. So thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about before we sign off here?
Man,
Yeah. All right.
you should wrap it because I'm
All right.
like,
Yep. All right. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you.
Good. It's good conversation. That's why it kept going. But we'll close it out with our quote. You have a story to tell, and people need to hear it. Be confident and know you have everything you need to make an impact.
It's true.